It's 1:30 p.m. in Lagos, same time in London, and we're bringing you markets, insights, and an analysis on Business Incorporated, live from Channels Television. Here's what's coming up. World's first green methanol-powered container ship docks in Egypt. And Kenya in talks with World Bank to boost Hustler Fund lending. And Amazon opens its first African Amazon Web Services Skills Center in South Africa. Welcome to the program. I'm Will Ibang. Let's kick off with the markets. First up, major equities in Africa. At intraday, it was bloody red on the African stock exchanges. Nigeria's NGX was down today, 0.26%. South Africa's GSE was down 0.39%, and this was due to the U.S. Fed meeting minutes, which hinted at potentially more interest rate hikes. And in Egypt, let's look at that quickly. We see Egypt also down at intraday at 0.36%, while Nairobi Securities Exchange closed Wednesday's session in negative territory. Now let's flip over to the Middle East, where we see mostly green at intraday. It's up on the Abu Dhabi index today, up 0.05%. Same margin for Dubai's index to close at 4,067 points. Let's see what Saudi did at intraday. More than 0.5% up today at intraday, while Qatari index was down 0.86%. Now, after decades of debate, the German government is legalizing cannabis. This makes Germany the largest European country to legalize marijuana, even as other countries uphold the toughest bans. Lars Alter is with Deutsche Welle in Berlin. Lars, what can you tell us about these plans?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Now, here's what's going on. The government wants to primarily end the illegality of a product that's kind of ubiquitous anyway. Hundreds of thousands of people in Germany consume cannabis, and it's been that way for decades. The problem, they've been doing it illegally, creating problems for themselves, for the police, for the court system. And since an illegal product is harder to procure than a legal product and is also usually more expensive, the situation has led to a vibrant black market and to crime, of course. Now, according to the new law, everyone can grow up to 3 plants legally from now on. And if you get a membership in a cannabis club, you can buy up to 25 grams of cannabis for consumption legally. Of course, this new law is quite controversial. The opposition party says that legalizing cannabis will lead more people to consume it. They're afraid that especially young people will find the drug more attractive and start smoking a joint, and that it could be an entry drug leading to a downward path. There's no real science to back that up. Much of their argument has been heard before and is general conservative fear-mongering.
But will the new legislation, Lars, create a whole new industry?
Likely not, because a central part of the new law are cannabis clubs that will allow people to buy cannabis, and these clubs, according to the law, will have to be non-for-profit organizations. That is quite different from other countries where cannabis has recently been legalized. Take, for example, the United States, where cannabis has become a multi-billion-dollar business in states like California, Colorado, Arizona, or Washington. There's for-profit farms growing weed. There's thousands of stores there. There's smoking lounges. There's a full retail and recreational industry around cannabis. But again, this is precisely what the government did not want in Germany. They went for decriminalization and getting rid of a black market. They did not want to build up or strengthen an industry.
I want to see how they're going to regulate that, so keep that from being abused. But what do you see these new plans meaning for companies and businesses and for markets as well?
Well, mostly for companies hoping to break into the German cannabis market, it means they have to be patient. As I said, this is not a commercial thing right now, but of course, there are major financial aspects to the story. The government is going to save around 800 million euros a year in police work that used to target cannabis-related crime. Plus, there's another 220 million euros that the court system will save. That's according to an economist who has been analyzing the cannabis trade for years. That analyst, however, isn't all too happy with the new law, and he says that an important market opportunity has been missed. If Germany, he says, went all in on commercializing cannabis, an industry would create tens of thousands of jobs. It would bring in 280 million in income tax, plus another 650 million euros in value-added tax, and much more. All in all, the expert says a full legalization, including commercializing cannabis, could bring in 3.3 billion euros per year. But as I said, that is currently not on the table.
Thanks, Lars. Lars also there in Berlin. And now to the UK, where the strike action by workers at Gatwick Airport has been called off after an improved pay offer. Let's talk to Juliana in London. Hi, Juliana. First of all, this is good news for travelers, but tell us, what's this offer?
You're absolutely right. This is great news, Will. Good afternoon. We don't know the offer that has been brokered between Unite Union and Red Handling. Now, Red Handling are a company that work underneath Gatwick Airport, and they look after most of the ground staff. So anybody you would see at check-in and baggage handling and those sorts of roles, along with many other sectors across this country, they decided to spark some industrial action because they're not happy about paid jobs and conditions. This was going to be a really crippling strike because, of course, we're in the middle of the summer. This is the time British holiday makers do love to get away. And Gatwick is a very important airport. In fact, I think the strike would have affected about 45,000 passengers across 260 flights. But alas, that's not to be the case anymore because there has been some breaking news early this morning, as you quite rightly said, and that is that Unite Union have agreed a deal with Red Handling. We don't know the details of the deal because it's still a developing story, but apparently it was a significant improvement on previous pay offers. So this is great news because, of course, this strike was about to begin tomorrow, and I believe Red Handling staff are also going to strike over next weekend, which is Bank Holiday weekend, a very, very busy period for anybody looking to travel into or out of the United Kingdom.
I do hope that they do get a better offer and don't reject the offer because we don't need any more strikes. Now, away from that, we've seen Saudi Crown Prince has been invited to visit the UK. When is this visit? And it appears it's getting mixed reactions from the parliament.
Yeah, this is a really interesting story, a very important story, because we know that Saudi Arabia and the United Kingdom do share a very important relationship. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who is probably the most important leader in the Desert Kingdom, a very controversial figure, as you quite rightly said, but certainly I think amongst allies he is seen as a transformative figure. In fact, some people say that Saudi Arabia in the next 15 or 20 years could resemble Dubai, which is hard to fathom considering they have pretty strict rules when it comes to how people conduct themselves. I think one of the reasons why this proposed visit is garnering eyebrow raising, shall we just say, is because of the kingdom's behaviour when it comes to treating people humanely. But I think when it comes to Crown Prince Salman, there is a particular focus, of course, because of what happened with the murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He was murdered, in fact, butchered and dismembered quite famously in 2008 when he was taken into, well, he voluntarily went into the Saudi Arabia embassy in Istanbul, and he never made it out alive. Now, according to US intelligence agencies, they concluded a couple of years ago that the Crown Prince was indeed the man who asked for Khashoggi's death. Of course, we know that Riyadh have always denied it, but that's where the controversy is from the Liberal Democrats, the third biggest party in the United Kingdom, who've been talking about the visit, as well as Amnesty International. When is it? We believe it's going to be in October, although we're not sure. I believe Downing Street this morning confirmed that it would be taking place in the autumn. We have a couple of significant events taking place during that time, including the world's first AI security summit, which perhaps he could be coming for that reason. I think it's important to state as well that Saudi Arabia and the Saudi royals have a very strong bond with the British royal family. I believe that Riyadh did turn down the invitation for the Crown Prince to attend the Queen's funeral in October. He did send one of his senior aides. But I think there's a lot of mending to do in terms of the relationship. Again, I mentioned the transformation of the kingdom into something like Dubai, because I believe earlier this year the kingdom did say that they were going to invest $1 trillion in trying to diversify their oil-dependent economy, and that's where Britain are trying to tie them down, because, of course, the services economy is pretty dominant here. In fact, it contributes to about 80% of Britain's GDP, and if you are going to transform your nation, you need services the way Dubai has. So, very controversial visit, but very, very important for the British Prime Minister.
I do see that you mentioned they have strong ties with the UK, and we also see that they've also opened an office in London for its £1 trillion investment fund. The kingdom is seeking to diversify its economy from oil, and I think UK has a strong part to play in this diversification, is it not, Juliana?
Well, that's what I just said, that, yes, we know that the kingdom have just announced that they have a $1 trillion investment fund for transforming their economy. And because Britain has a dominant services sector, of course, they are going to contribute immensely to that. But I wouldn't just stop at economic ties as well. I think defence is really critical, particularly in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia in February 2022. I think people be able to cast their minds back to March 2022, when the then British Prime Minister Boris Johnson made his way to Riyadh to have some talks with Saudi about potentially importing more Saudi gas. So the relationship crosses many factors, but again, you know, I think the human rights issues and the fact that executions take place pretty often in the kingdom is an alarming situation. And of course, I think the most important thing that will stick into the minds of people when we mention Crown Prince Salman is the murder of the journalist, prominent journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered in 2018, just 6 months before the Crown Prince visited Theresa May at number 10 Downing Street. The West completely condemned the act, and the US intelligence agencies concluded that he was the man who asked for the hit job to be taken out.
Very murky waters there, Juliana. But how are markets doing at intraday?
Not great, actually. The UK blue chip index is firmly in the red, down at 0.15%. The FTSE 100 is down 2, Will, at 0.10%, and the FTSE 250, that's down by 0.5% at intraday. In the currencies market, the British pound is doing pretty well against the US dollar. It's actually trading up against the dollar by 0.15%, also trading up against the euro by 0.08%, but down at intraday against the Japanese yen by 0.02%.
Thanks a lot, Juliana. It's good to have you again. Now move over to Asia, where the markets were mixed on Thursday after the U.S. Federal Reserve's July minutes showed inflation concerns lingered, which could lead to more rate hikes. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was trading near the flat line, while on mainland China, the Shanghai Index was up 0.43%. In Australia, we're seeing the S&P ASX 200 was down 0.68% to end at 7,146 points, its lowest level in over a month, as the country's unemployment rate rose slightly to 3.7% in July. Japan's Nikkei 225 slid 0.44% to end its lowest level since June. The country saw its trade balance slip into a deficit in July from the surplus it recorded in June. Now, South Korea's Kospi was down 0.23% to end, and it records its 5th straight day of losses. Now move over to the other markets in U.S. The stock futures nudged higher early on Thursday as investors digested the Federal Reserve's latest commentary that future rate hikes are not out of the picture. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average added 0.22%. We see the S&P 500 also adding 0.22%, while we see the Nasdaq futures up 0.23%. Now, the moves follow a second consecutive losing session for the three major averages. Stocks have been suffering through a rocky August, with the major averages well in negative territory for the month. Investors will watch Thursday for a fresh batch of corporate earnings, as well as the latest weekly jobless claims report. Next, more updates from the commodities market space here in Africa. Do stay with us. This is Business Incorporated. Welcome back. Now, detergents, we're looking at the commodity, detergents, which is an essential item for both households and businesses. In the past year in Nigeria, the price of detergents has spiked approximately by 100%, taking out more money from the pockets of consumers. I know I don't want to keep dirty laundry, but let's talk to Halima Adedion, analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Hi, Halima. Many people have not been able to afford some brands of detergent these days due to high costs. Can you tell us the income and substitution effect on the demand for detergent in the short to medium term?
Well, thank you for having me. It is not surprising that the price of detergents has spiked over the past 12 months, because generally now we have a high inflationary pressure in the country. Presently, the headline inflation is about 24.08. Core inflation is above 20%, so also food inflation. So we'll see all these things too reflecting in other commodities in the economy. And as a result, that means consumers have less to spend, that is less disposable income. And what that means is that they will have to shift to unbranded products or buy less of the detergents that they need, because there is less to spend for the consumers. And as a result of this, we will see a fall in demand and a drop in sales for detergent producing firms, which means that they will have to do more in order to have more market shares within the industry. And also, they would have to come up with a consolidation scheme that will help them stay in business. And what we are seeing presently in Nigeria now is that most households have even started to formulate their own detergents, either in form of liquid or powder form, in order to mitigate the effects of rising prices in the economy. So for now, what we would see is that a shift in consumption to lower brand or homemade detergents will be used by so many households.
That's quite interesting there, Halima. But making homemade detergent will also require some inputs, and palm oil is a major input used in the production of detergent. Now, given that detergent industry in Nigeria is looking towards investing in optimizing palm kernel oil as a bio-based raw material and is committed to sustainable sourcing, how will this affect the cost of inputs and the price of detergent?
Oh, well, it's a good move, because that means they are trying to do what we call backward integration. So, and as a result of that, it will lead to a reduction in the price of palm oil as an input for making detergents. But we must not forget that it is not only the main input for producing detergents. We also have some other imported inputs that is needed. But the move to invest in a backward integration will go a long way to reduce to some extent the cost of inputs for the firms. And in the near to medium term, we could see a gradual drop, let me put it that way, if other bottlenecks that are affecting the cost of production in the detergent firm is being addressed, especially by the government.
Now, what are these bottlenecks? Could you just tell us some of them?
Oh, well, in the past 3 months now, let's say from mid-June, we'll say that Naira is one of the worst performing currency in the world. It's depreciated to about 950 from around 750. So for an industry that needs to import raw material for its production, that means more money is needed to acquire a certain quantity of the commodity. So that is a bottleneck. Another thing is the logistic cost that has really spiked. by more than 3%, more than 300%, because we now have price of fuel that is tripling compared to what we do have in past few months. So all this put together will compound the ease of doing business for detergent and producing firms.
Speaking of ease of doing business, we saw in April, one of the big brands in the manufacturing industry, Unilever, announced the closure of its home care and skin cleansing businesses. With this new trend, what is the outlook for the industry as a whole? And how sustainable is the detergent business for the firms that are still in operation?
In terms of sustainability, because I just said earlier that detergent is an essential product, that means there is market for the commodity. But because of the different difficulties they are having, we'll see that some detergent producing company are even doing what we call like a third party arrangement, whereby the company in the parent's country is being given some aspect of their producing production stage. So in order to avoid this, we can have a situation whereby companies will come together in order to reduce the cost of production or improvements in the locally produced detergents. That means we'll have an improvement in the domestic companies that are producing detergent, because most of these companies that are folding up and altering their production process are multinational companies. So because it's an essential product, the future of detergent is quite very, very bright if we have some ease in the long run.
Thanks a lot, Halima. We do need that ease in the long run, because no one wants to keep dirty laundry, lying around, and not everyone can make homemade detergent. But thank you so much, Halima Adediro, analyst with financial derivatives, for sharing your thoughts on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And now the world's first container ship powered by green methanol has reached East Port Said in Egypt, marking the first ship-to-container ship methanol bunkering operation. This is the ship's third bunkering stop on its maiden journey from Ulsan, South Korea to Copenhagen, Denmark. The 172-meter-long ship, owned by industry major Maersk, was built by South Korea's Hyundai Mipo Dockyard. The ship received its inaugural fueling at the port of Ulsan, South Korea, in July the 16th and made a stop in Singapore on July the 27th, where it received another batch of green methanol. Now, Kenya says it is in talks with the World Bank and the European Union to ramp up its Hustler Fund project. The fund was launched in December 2022 by Kenya President William Ruto, which is seeking to provide cheap credit to over 20 million citizens at the grassroots level. According to official sources, the loan will support small enterprises with 200 billion Kenyan shillings over the next 5 years. And now Amazon Web Services, AWS, has opened its first international AWS Skills Center in Cape Town, South Africa. The AWS Skills Centers are Amazon's dedicated in-person cloud learning spaces designed for anyone who is curious about cloud computing and career possibilities in the industry. The center says it is committed to removing barriers for people to access the skills training they need to grow their careers, while helping to fulfill Amazon's goal of providing free digital skills training to 29 million people around the globe by 2025. And that's a wrap on Business Incorporated. To join us tomorrow for another edition, stay tuned. I'm Will Ibang. Thanks for watching.